All right, we're back, everyone. We had a little technical difficulties. TalkShoe dropped the call or something weird. So I was making some sort of point about this group about Occupy Wall Street. Um,
Oh, I think that's right. Now I remember what you were saying. You were saying that that you don't know, it may or may not be true that like there's a sort of a list of conditions
yeah,
that have to be satisfied for a social movement to
yeah.
succeed or
So
what have you.
so yeah, I was saying that historians or political scientists might know this or make a point, or it might just be forever true with the social structure of the human being that there's these lists or these one or two things that need to happen for a group to succeed, or and that might be true. But my point was or is that I think there's different avenues of success and there's different avenues of change, and that this group might reach some sort of success or some sort of marker of change before it gets to a point that everybody who's involved coalesces into one or two or three or four demands. And I was saying, like, you in order, you have to have demands before you have to have goals, and you can't know if you reach your goals until you actually make goals. But my point was, I don't think anyone should try to pigeonhole what's going on now and put it in a box that's already been built and say, well, it's not like this movement, or it's not like that movement, or it didn't have these goals like that thing had, or I feel like until it figures out what it is and what it can do, any of that stuff is not really relevant. And I was saying, like, having a firm list of demands is, to me, on the low. If that's the worst thing you can say about this group is they don't have a cohesive list of demands, I think that's fine. I think that's a very low level of issues, because what's at the top of their priority list is that everyone who wants to be involved get involved. That no matter what your ideology is, and no matter what your political ideology is, that your voice matters and it counts, and as long as you agree or not agree, but want to share that disagreement, that there's too much, that Wall Street has too much power over our economy and over our politics, then you're part of the 99%. Then I think you should go down there and stand up for that. And again, whether or not, if this thing peters out next week, if it peters out 2 years from now, if it never gets a constitutional amendment to end, corporate donations to, corporate funding of campaigns and stuff like that. If it doesn't, that's. I feel like to get involved in something only because it's going to reach a goal. I mean, again, that's important. You do want to use your time wisely, but by occupying, by standing up, by demonstrating, by protesting, by getting involved in direct action, that is the point. The point is that American people aren't going to be shit upon anymore. The point is, the list. I feel like that's the main thing, is that people don't want to live in a country that's worse than their parents had, and that's going to be worse for their kids. And at a certain point, everyone has to make the decision to either sit back and be quiet and let the status quo perpetuate itself, or stand up and say, no, I don't like that, and say something about it, whether or not it gets changed or not. So I feel like that's why I support this. Like I said before, not everybody is at a place ideologically or politically or whatever to really be on board or to really go out. Everyone can do something to help, even if they don't feel like they want to go down there, or they don't want to demonstrate, or they don't want to, sleep overnight or camp out like people are doing. There's other ways you can help support people who, at the very least, want economic and freedom for all Americans. At the very least, they might be pro-life, they might be pro-choice, but this is the least what they can agree on, is that the American dream is dead. We need to figure out how to rebuild it and figure out how to make our economy work for most people and not just top 1 or 2%. And I feel like that's it. That's all you need to start with. I feel like if that agreement is not strong enough to compel you to go down there, then I don't know what else is. because that is the crux of everything that's wrong in this country is money and politics, is the corporate influence over our government. I mean, that is the you don't like name an issue and let's see how it connects to to Wall Street. So that's my point. Is that I guess I already made it. I don't need to restate it, do
I? Yeah, I mean, I get your point. And of course, like, I mean, it's hard to be certain about anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I'm right about anything I'm saying. I could easily be. I have been wrong in the past. I will be wrong again. So, whatever. I make these statements because I think they're true, but whatever. Who knows? So, I mean, when I say this, it just seems sort of logical to me, I guess, that like just to like pull it back a little more, like make it more abstract. Like if you want to accomplish something, you're more likely to accomplish something if you have a goal. Like that just seems kind of straightforward to me.
Hey, I think that's most likely true. I totally agree with you that is logical. It makes sense if we see it in practice. If you don't know, because if you don't set a goal, how do you know how to reach that goal, right? I totally agree with that, but that's not what the point is.
And as you pointed out, you won't necessarily reach the goal you originally had.
Exactly.
You will, but because you were motivated by that goal, you might accomplish something.
It's
along
like, hey,
the way.
it's like I'm gonna train to run a marathon, but you train for a year and all you can run is a half marathon. Well, you still did something, right?
Exactly.
You set a goal, you reached a smaller subset of that goal. But to me, that's not what the point of this is about right now. The point isn't. The point is to I almost feel like this is a head count. It's a roll call across America, across the world, to say stand up if you feel like this is not working. If the economic system that we have right now is not working for you, then get involved. I feel like that's all it's asking. Anything else? Any other ideology, any other political, characteristics or whatever, that's all extra. I think that's.
And
all
I mean, especially if we're saying like, I gotta go join a group with people that hold political views that I don't like. I'm especially concerned about knowing that the goals that it eventually has are going to be goals that I agree with.
Well, that's the whole point about having a consensus, right? If you go down to Occupy Bloomington, that group is not going, as long as that group is run the way these groups are trying to design themselves to run, self-organizing, no leaders, no one has one voice that's more than the other. As long as that framework stays true, then that group is not going to engage in anything you don't agree with. Because if you did disagree with it, you would have brought it up at the General Assembly. You would have said, I have a hard block to this. You would have said, if this thing passes, I am leaving. And they would say, we're not passing this unless there's 100% consensus. Okay? So that's how you negate that. And that's how you get the fringe ideas and the ideas that people can't all agree with to not even be on the table right now. Is because, we need to bring our troops back. Yes, that's important. We need to end the Fed. Okay. We need to get involved in Palestine and Israel. Okay. Like all of these other things that people could easily make this about are not rising to the top of the action of these groups, because everyone has to come to a consensus, and by the very nature of a consensus, only the things that matter to everybody is going to be up there. So if you're part of the group is going to do things you agree with, because you have a voice, and you will specifically be able to say, no, I don't agree with what that guy just said. I don't think we need religion in schools. He wants this Occupy movement to be about getting God back in the school and to have prayer in school and whatever. I disagree with that. Then the group has to come with a consensus and say, is Occupy Bloomington going to be, pro creationism taught in classrooms or not? If that's the topic of discussion, somebody could pose that. Somebody could say, I'd like this group to have to agree to this. It's going to be a consensus or not. So that is the mechanism by which you're going to be able to be with people who disagree with you on these other subset of issues, but on the big issues, the issues that affect everybody. Because creationism in schools doesn't necessarily affect everybody. You might not have kids. You might not care. but economics affects everybody. There's no one who is outside of the economic system. Um, so and the political system. So and those two things are linked. So I feel like that's what this thing is about right now. What it's going to be about in 5 months, I don't know. It might coalesce into some very specific message, and they all might say, you know what, this is a one. It might just be a campaign to get money out of politics, and that's it. And they all say, every group around the world unanimously says, or not around the country says, hey, this is what we want, money out of politics. That's the one demand we have, and they might stick with that. Or they could keep growing and growing and fluctuating in numbers or whatever. It might not grow all the time, but it could just keep going until Congress says, "Hey, we're going to try this. Maybe this will shut them up." It might shut them up. It might not shut them up. But there's any number of outcomes here. Some might say infinite, and and I think my philosophy here, my 2 cents, is just that don't let complacency and don't let fear and don't let the idea that institutions are too big to be changed. And don't let don't let the forces that govern the status quo keep you from raising your voice. That's all I have to say about the issue. And if you think this is not the way to raise your voice, fine, do it some other way. I just think it's important that you do it. I think it's important you stand up for what you believe, because if you don't, you won't get what you want. You won't get your rights. Your rights will be trampled because you know our rights had to be guaranteed, and the rights that we have had to be guaranteed in the Constitution. Like, corporations didn't give us those rights. If it was up to them, we wouldn't have them. You know, so you can't lose sight of the fact that life is a struggle, and it's a battle, and so is politics. And it's a battle against who has the most influence. And if and this movement is about saying that corporate America has too much influence over how the government treats the rest of the people, and it's unsustainable. And there's a reason why the economy hasn't picked up. There's a reason why we're headed to a double dip recession. There's a reason why people have 50, 60, 70, 80, $100,000 in college loans. There's a reason why people can't buy houses. There's a reason. There's a reason for all this stuff, and the reason is it goes back to Wall Street. It goes back to how we set up this country and how we set up our economy, and that can be changed. And I know that sounds like revolution, but it can be incrementally changed, one election at a time, right? One Democratic election at a time, peacefully. So yeah, so I feel like hopefully that gives you some ideas about what this thing's about and what's going on. And again, like, I'm not someone who's easily bought into groups and movements, and because for various reasons. And this Occupy Wall Street is a very specific culmination of things that makes me say, yeah, I'm on that page. If it was a leader movement, I'd have a different opinion about this. If it was all left wing, I'd have an opinion about this. If it was saying we don't want any Tea Party people here, we don't want any independents here, we don't want any Republicans here, I'd have a different opinion about this. If they were saying we want to demolish the government, or we want no corporations in America, I have a different opinion about this. But that's not what they're saying, and I think you got to go and hear what they're saying to figure out if it's for you or not. But I think the qualifications to figure out if it's for you or not, based on how the framework has been set up, is are you benefiting from this economy or not, and do you expect to in the long run, and do you expect that this planet will be around in 100 years, and if you say no to that stuff, if you say, well, I might have a job now, but I might not in a month or a year, or yeah, I might have a job, but I can't afford health insurance, or yeah, I might have health insurance, but man, I can't use it. If I get sick, I actually won't be able to, pay for this thing, or I just think we have the right to decide how we live our lives. That's what it comes down to for me. And that's what democracy is about. Voicing that right to say this is how I want it, and In the beginning of this movement, any movement, it's the people who are most passionate for change that are going to be there. The people who are sort of moderately passionate for change will come next, and the people who are reluctant will come later. So, I'm not saying, got to get in it now or don't, or you can't reap the benefits or anything like that. If something changes, but I think it is important that it builds momentum and that we all, physically move our bodies to a location so it can be made clear that you as an individual and those people who are there collectively, disagree about the central idea of Wall Street, and then of course there's other topics discussed there. And what's cool about these things, man, I mean, they have classes that are going on. When I went Saturday, this guy was giving a lecture about Glass-Steagall and how that changed economics in Wall Street, and there's all kinds of classes that educate. It's about educating people on the issues too. So even if you don't know what's going on, or don't know how things are affecting you, or don't know why your company is laying people off every quarter, yet posting record profits, or you don't know, why the roads can't be fixed in your town, you can go figure it out, go find out, go talk to people. And I just think, I'm one of those crazy hippie liberals, but we have to stand together as people against the forces that want to divide us. Because to me that's the best part of humanity is community and solidarity and standing together and working for change collectively. And if ants can do it, why can't we?
Good point. They're really good at that. I don't know.
They are.
Give them credit, I have to say.
Now, you might say ants have a leader with the queen, and they have this definitive goal.
They do that.
But, hey, you think they had that at the beginning?
They can't just, stand around in a pile and be like, all right.
Let's figure out what we want, guys.
Yeah. But yeah,
listen, and again, I'll say I might have a different opinion about this if it was only Occupy in America, but this idea, specifically the Occupy ideas around the world, but the fundamental idea of people standing up and using the internet for social justice and change is a worldwide phenomenon that's going on now. And I think it's, we saw that in the Middle East, we saw it in North Africa, we saw that the riots in the UK. I mean, this isn't an isolated phenomenon. This isn't something that historically, hasn't happened before in terms of people standing up for their rights and change. So I know that kind of stuff is scary. I know change is scary and all that kind of stuff. Uncertainty is scary.
Right,
but,
and especially with sort of like the checkered history of revolutionary movements. I mean, I would say that there's there's certainly exceptions to the rule, but I mean there's any number of examples of revolutions leading to systems and regimes that are actually worse than the predecessor that was already bad.
So that's what I was going to talk about is one of the things this movement has to worry about is outside infiltrators, right? Because there will be people in the powers that be in the status quo who will seek to co-opt this in various ways, who will seek to distort the message, who will send people in to infiltrate and to try to figure out who's in charge and to try to take over and institute demands and dissent. And I'm not an expert, again, I hate saying that, but I feel like I always have to qualify that. There's people who say that happened in the Middle East, that the uprising in Egypt wasn't wholly organic, that CIA operatives got in there and said, hey, and stirred up public dissent until it became a sort of democratic movement. So I think there's any number of detractors, and I don't want to be naive and to say that this is the only way for change, or this will certainly do change, or it'll only be positive change, or anything. Who can say?
Maybe this movement was started by the CIA.
Maybe this movement was started by the CIA. What they would, the thing is, they're obviously not leading it, and they obviously couldn't have predicted that it would get to this point, even if they did start it, right? But there's no way they can control it and that's the thing again. Like I would feel differently about this if it was central. There was a central. Occupy Wall Street was the main, and everybody else had to do what they wanted. I would feel. I might still agree with what they want, but I would feel different about joining. But the fact that Occupy Bloomington is different than Occupy Minnesota, Occupy Hawaii, Occupy wherever, that the commonalities that they have is that it's all-inclusive, self-governing, positive, nonviolent, anti-corporate greed and control over our government. That's the stuff they all have in common. Everything else is up to the people there to decide. And if you go there and if you're part of the group, you get to help figure out what the group wants to do. And if you can't complain, you can't complain about it if you're not there. You can't complain about it if why is that committee doing that thing? Well, I don't know. Go be on that committee and have them agree or disagree with your opinions. And to me, that is the best way to institute change, to figure out what's going on, because you're gonna have, like I said before, it's a place to go and learn too. Figure out what the issues are, because there's people who talk about stuff I don't know. I don't have the answer on what to do with the Fed. I'm pretty sure something's up. I'm pretty sure it's not working the way that's best. I don't know how to change it. I don't know all the answers. That's one of the issues that if this was an anti-Fed party or movement, I wouldn't be signing up because I don't know enough about it. But what I do know is that the economic state of this country is horrible, and the future is not bright. And the only thing I think that everybody can do about it is at this point, I shouldn't say only thing. One of the things people can do about it at this point is to occupy. So have I convinced you yet? What else I got to say? How much money do I have to give you? Jeez, man.
Yeah. I mean, you make a strong case. I have to say.
Again, I feel like the simple case is what else are you going to do?
Although actually, I would say, maybe to a greater extent, you
scared you.
And scare me isn't quite the right word. Like, sort of inspire me to want to do something, I guess. But I'm still not totally convinced about this Occupy thing.
What?
I know that you've done a valiant job. I can't say I've heard anyone talk about it in a way that makes it sound as appealing, but I'm still, my fundamental hang-ups still bother me. I'm still just not prepared to sort of commit to it.
But what does that mean? What does committing to it mean?
Well, going, like showing up, like becoming a part of it. In that way.
Yeah, but I feel like commitment is one of those weird words because I feel like you're not committing anything. Like if you go, you're not committing anything.
Well, I'm committing the time. That's sort of what I mean. Like I'm not prepared to actually try to think about committing to it. I don't know. Maybe that's the word. I don't know. Anyway, like it sort of makes me think, maybe I should do something.
Listen, I would agree.
Maybe I should figure out what I actually want to do.
Yeah, and if that's all you got out of this, that's a ton. I think that's a ton. If that's the least idea you have now, so because I think that's at least what my point is everybody, people need to be doing something, because if everyone's not doing something, because that's collectively that's the most power we have. Individually we don't have a lot of power. Collectively we have power, and the collective power is the only thing that's strong enough to go against corporate power and political power. And listen, if the country was doing fine and we had like 5% or 3% employment and people could go to college and buy houses and be fine and people had jobs, and hey, there'd be no point. There'd be no point to be out in the streets, but that's not the case. The case is that there are specific interests in the country who are not only trying to, it's a theft, right? If you really look at Wall Street, if you really look at the top 1%, they are extracting capital out of the economy. They are literally taking money out of the economy, which is depressing the economic prosperity of everybody below them. If you look at the share of wealth at the top have now between 30 years ago and 50 years ago and 100 years ago, you'll see the huge change. You know, so and that was the thing about the Tea Party was they went and they were very loud and vocal and got a lot of attention. But they were largely anti-tax, anti-government, small government kind of a thing. Which is policy, I think. And they were very angry, and and that's all they had was their anger and their anti-tax policy, anti-government policy rhetoric.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is totally
that was the core. It kind of got diffused from there, but
it got, and then they got other stuff attached to it. But I'm
and politicians co-opted it and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
this is completely different. I feel like it's just miles away from what that was, because this isn't about policy. This is about morality. And I feel like when you fight a moral fight, when you're involved in the fundamental cause of morality of a country over an issue, that's when you're going to have the most passion, and that's when you're going to have the most fervor, and that's where you're going to have the most ability to win. The civil rights movement wasn't about policies particularly. It was about morality, right?
Well, but they did have policy demands. I mean,
of course. Well,
it manifested like the underlying idea of why the policy should be enacted is sort of moral.
Yeah,
but
what I'm saying is it wasn't policy first. It was morality first.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel
like that's what this movement is. It's morality first, and I think that's why it seems to have a left-leaning bent to it, because I think politically speaking, most of the moral fiber is on the left. Those are the people who usually care about the disenfranchised and the sick and the poor and the elderly and education and that kind of stuff. Not that other people don't, but that's generally speaking the generalization there. And so I feel like, to me, that's another thing that makes this very different than other things that have happened before, is that this is fundamentally a fight of morality, and because the morality here is fair. What is fair in terms of economics? That's the first question. Second question is what's fair in terms of politics. And then after that, you get these other things that people are worried about, these other things that people are concerned about, the other things that the 99% can argue about. But those first two things, I think, are the central key issues, and for everybody, for everybody's happiness. Because whether you vote Republican or Democrat, if you don't have a job, it doesn't matter. That's just how I feel about it. You can, the banks don't care. The banks will foreclose on you if you vote Republican or if you vote Democrat. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
The corporations will pollute your town, your blue state versus a red state just the same. So I think we have to put. That's what I like about this group, is putting politics in terms of what divides us aside for now, and saying, what can we all agree on first? Let's start with what we can agree on, and build from there. And go after what we can agree on. And like I said before, I'll say it again. You can look at your life and really think about the past and the state of, what people were able to achieve in this country in the past and what they can do now, and does it look better than the future? And if you say no, if you say it looks worse in the future and you do nothing about it, you are helping to build that future. You are helping, Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. You're helping to make that reality come to fruition if you do nothing when you see a problem. So, I mean, I feel like that's the core. If you ask yourself that question, that doesn't mean you answer yes and you go out and march. But I feel like it should lead, like you said, it makes you want to do something.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm open to the idea that, like, it turns into something that I'm prepared to participate in. I don't think that's impossible. It's just where it stands now, like, I don't know. It's interesting. The way you
I'm
describe it,
curious.
like
What do you? Oh, go ahead.
the way you describe it, like it. I mean, it sounds like it sounds very unique.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like it, and I think for even if it's like almost as an experiment, just to see what it is, I think is valuable. You know what I mean? To see this sort of democracy in action, and to see how these people are carrying themselves and organizing themselves, and just as a sort of scientific way to look at that, I think is interesting. Whether or not you commit to getting involved, I think this is history in the making in a lot of ways. Above and beyond what they'll get done and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, wow, I got to listen to this to see if maybe I can get myself fired back up.
You really should, man. You gave like 2 really rousing speeches.
Nice. Vote for me this coming election because I apparently am running for something.
Yeah.
No,
like
man.
Within
I mean,
the last
that's
hour or so, it was really.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I'm at the point in my life, dude, where it's like, you got to figure out what you stand for, and you got to figure out like what you're willing to let happen, and you got to figure out, what you're willing to try to change. And I've been, as most people in their 20s and 30s, and when they start to become adults and they're looking around and seeing the state of the world and formulating opinions, everybody goes through those stages, and you continue to go through those stages. But you look around for, if you want to change something, you kind of look around for how to change things. You kind of look at what's already there, and okay, I can join this party, or I can vote in this election, or I can march in this march, or I can go do this thing, and that's all well and good. Participation is better than no participation. But I think to me, this is the only thing that has these qualities that make it that set it up to be fundamentally different than anything that's come before it. All the other stuff that didn't really work, this doesn't. This is different than that stuff. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to work, but what it means is it doesn't necessarily have the trappings of the things that didn't work before. And to me, that's key. And I think what's what am I trying to say? The easiest way for the Occupy movement to succeed is for more and more people to join. And for more and more people to join, I think more people need to hear about it and to basically agree with the central anti-Wall Street sentiment. And if you agree with that, then I think you're on board, and you should do something about that. And like I said, other issues people may have, other ideologies and political characteristics. That stuff is, it's all welcome there. You can go speak your piece. You can go talk to people. You can say, hey, I think we should be doing this. If they agree with you, cool. If they don't, they don't. That's democracy. And I think it's unprecedented to be a part of something like that, to where you don't have to go and follow a leader, or go and be a part of some institution that's been around for 100 years, or been around for 50 years, or has a very rigid model of operation. And obviously this kind of thing, like I said before, attracts people who want to be involved in something that's new and different or whatever. And the people who have the most passion for that come out first. But I just think it's the kind of thing, man, that it's going to resonate with people so easily. I think that's why it spread so fast, because it's just the central message is simple, and the central message is something that affects 99% of everybody. And I think that's why it's working, and I think that's why it's going to continue to work. If their message was a little bit askew, if they were like, like I said before, there's any number of little changes you could make to how this thing is going, that me and a ton of other people would be like, yeah, not so much for me. And for you, it's the same way. I mean, for you, if they add the details to what they want, you might be on board. And they might get there sooner rather than later. But until then, I think it's just going to attract people who agree with the basic premise. So
Right.
all I want you to get from this, besides the fact that I'm happy you're inspired to do something, is when you hear people say, "Oh, those Occupy Wall Street people, they don't know what they want. We shouldn't listen to them." Like, now you know why that's not a valid argument. I feel like hopefully you know why that's just not a very strong argument. Like, it's it's I feel like it's a short-sighted barb to throw at them. Um, and I see that in the media a lot. And I was gonna make that comment about Bill Maher. I was watching Real Time,
Oh
the
yeah.
most recent. I know, that was like 15 hours ago.
I forgot. Wow. Yeah, it's been an odyssey since then. Okay.
Last October 7th, Bill Maher, which was the first one where he brought up the Occupy Wall Street people, and they were talking about the Tea Party people, and so having sort of, I guess I'm a part of Occupy Wall, L.A. I've been there, and I follow online religiously, and it was very, 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 very weird, dude, to hear these pundits talk about a group you're a part of. It was very weird to hear them just make blanket statements about a group, and I was just because I've the same kind of stuff somebody might say about the Tea Party. If you're not in the Tea Party, you have a different opinion. But if you're in the Tea Party, you're gonna be like, oh, that feels weird. You're talking about me. So him talking about the Bill Maher talking about, and he said the same stuff the media always. And as much as I love Bill Maher, he's not. He's a human like anybody else. He only has so much he can focus his attention on. But he was very sort of ignorant of what's going on there, and kind of reiterated what the media is reiterating. The same, well, oh, they don't know what they want. It's just a bunch of kids, blah blah blah. And I feel like if he really went down there, like a lot of people have done. Danny Glover came down to Occupy LA. He was on the live stream talking. Cornel West and Tavis Smiley went down there. There's a lot of people. It's going to attract way more attention once celebrities and stuff get there. But anyway, Roseanne Arquette was there. Anyway.
Really?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Susan Sarandon was at the Occupy Wall Street. So, but anyway, my point is, if he would have a different opinion if he had went down there and talked to people and see what was going on. And you're going to see a lot of people you don't agree with if you go down, if it's enough people, right? Because it's a wide tent. It's a lot of people that it's trying to attract. And so you're going to see people you don't necessarily agree with. You might see somebody with you're going to see anti-Obama people who are not like racist anti-Obama, but just they don't like his policies. And I think you have to sort of, what I like about it is you take all that in with a grain of salt, and you say that person is valid, is valid in having an opinion. That person is valid as being a human being. That person deserves economic justice, just like I do, and we can go from there. And,
well, I guess technically aren't racists potentially part of the 99% as well?
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right.
They are part of the 99%.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, here's the thing.
Maybe perhaps some of them aren't, but at least some are, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just talking about 99% of population, not economically.
Yeah. Again, I'm Mr. Literal.
Yeah. If you're talking about that, then sure. But I mean, and I think racists should come down too. Now they might not want to stay because their ideas aren't going to be welcomed if they're like, hey, I'm anti-immigration.
But wait,
right?
can they show up and just like veto everything? That's the other thing about this unanimous policy that seems weird. Like, I would never do this because I don't want to be an asshole. But like, could someone just come in and be like, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want anything, and just like ruin everything?
I think the answer is yes, but here's what I would imagine would happen.
Okay.
If somebody came up and they had a hard block on an issue. Because what happens is, you can't just say no and it doesn't happen. You say no and you have to get up and defend why you're saying no. You have to say what your problems are, and you have to, and you basically talk it out with the group, right? So if someone is saying no, 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 no to everything, and it's clear that they're not trying to progress with things, and they're just being assholes, or they're just doing that on purpose, I would imagine that the group would just vote for unanimous consent to ignore that person.
Unanimous -1. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it would be something because I mean no, these people are there trying to do something positive, and I think they're on the lookout for anybody who's trying to distract from that.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I don't actually think that's a serious problem, but it just
Yeah.
when you go for a system like that where you sort of rely on everybody, like I could see certain types of people wanting to just amuse themselves by messing with that system.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're in a group of other people, right? So if you're the asshole who keeps saying no to I mean, you're gonna be surrounded by people who are not gonna like you because you're doing that, and they're gonna be, hey man, what's up? Like, we're trying to get this thing passed, or why are you always saying no? I mean, you're gonna have to. It's not like just being on the internet saying no, or being in Congress and voting no on everything and not getting any sort of face-to-face feedback. I mean, you're gonna be in a group of people who aren't liking the fact that you're ruining their process. So I think that will help derail some of that.
Yeah.
But hopefully you know more about the Occupy movement now, and if you see people talking about it or whatever, you can chime in, or you can say, yeah, they might not have their list of demands yet, but it'll come in time, or else they won't be that effective. I mean, I feel like that's the answer to that, and I'm really tired of the media saying, oh, they don't have it, so let's turn the channel. I need to listen to these guys because they're not exactly like what we've seen before. Sorry, there's such thing as new. New things do happen. So.
Yeah.
And I just think again, there's a peaceful, there's a great warm fuzzy feeling about it being inclusive to the 99% and saying we can have our differences, we can differ on issues, but we're all in the same boat. And I feel like by going or showing support, however you show support, donating or whatever, donating clothes, donating money, donating food, whatever, that's the least you're doing, is saying I care about the future of this country and I care about my fellow man. And I feel like that's the two things that go together. Like the Tea Party didn't have that. The Tea Party didn't have that we want everyone to prosper together bent to it. And I think that's why it wasn't inclusive. That's why, and it was a very angry thing in the beginning. So I feel like that's what makes this thing different. Is it's not like if you only believe these three things you can come. It's not like that.
Right. Yeah. That makes it weird, man. It's weird.
And I got to say, at least in Occupy Los Angeles has been, I mean, it's been phenomenal. Like they are really close. I think the vote is Tuesday. To get the city council to vote a measure of solidarity with the protesters, which basically means the city is going to validate the protests, which I don't know has ever happened in the history of America.
Okay.
And it's been nonviolent so far here in LA, and mostly because these groups are sort of self-policing, and they don't like to say the word police, but you know what I mean. Like they make sure that they resolve conflicts when people have conflicts, that they're not littering, they're being good stewards of where they're occupying, that they're not making graffiti everywhere, they're not being loud, and LA's been great about working with the police and working with the city government, and they coordinated the occupation before it started. They said, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be down there doing this thing. We want to figure out how to do this peacefully with you guys. So, and the police, LAPD has a bad history of violence, and this has been one of the most spectacular displays of serving and protecting, the local population that the city have seen in a long time. Because other cities have not, has a lot of violence. Other cities, the police haven't been as great, and other cities haven't done what LA did, which is to work with their local governance and police departments. So, I think it says a lot to how these things can go in the future, and it says a lot about and it, best practice. Cities can adopt best practices. That's what works in one city could work in another. It might not work, and people will figure that kind of stuff out. Um, but Occupy LA, they've been saying since day one that they keep getting donations. That if you go there, they have food all day long. I mean, they have more food than they need. People are getting fed. Homeless people come and they need food. They get fed. Homeless people come and they need a place to sleep. They try to find a tent for them to sleep in. You know what I mean? Like people are dropping off food and water, and this'll really get you. This might actually make you want to go. But at least LA is their food is mostly vegan. If you can believe it, she said most of the food that we're eating is vegan. She says sometimes there's meat stuff, but most of the stuff I don't know what they're eating, but that's what she said, that most of their food that they have is vegan. So I thought that was ridiculous. Ridiculously awesome.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I could see that happening, especially in LA.
Because people are like, I don't want this vegan food. Give it to these guys.
Exactly.
Hey, honey, clean out the fridge of all that vegan food. We don't want that in here. But
they got
like
10,000 vegan restaurants, and
yeah.
What are they going to do?
But that goes to show you how you can organize societies in a peaceful, prosperous way. Now, of course, the more people you have in a society, the more complicated it gets. This is a microcosm of a society that is basically socialist. But that's working in that way, in that respect. And it just goes to show you, I think, that we can decide. Humans can decide how to live. We can decide to all reap the benefits and share equally or not. And we've eroded into a system where people don't have fairness. And we can either say, yeah, that's fine, that's all we can do, or we can realize that that's not true, and that there's better systems out there of organization and cooperation that all it needs is people to do it. Indeed. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this podcast, everybody. I think we're going to wrap it up. If you made it to the end, you are a hero. My personal hero. And, I'll a last disclaimer that the statements made on this podcast is not indicative of support of TalkShoe or any of the.
Does TalkShoe support anything?
Yeah, no. Dropping calls, they support that. All these ideas are just ideas and opinions, and you might have your own opinions, which are valid. So I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know. We've done a couple political podcasts before, and I don't know. It's I don't know. Personally,
we had this whole conversation.
If I disagree with you, I don't want to join a group with you, but I don't mind your disagreeing with me. I just I disagree with you about something. I think you're wrong. So
yeah, but that's the thing. Like,
sorry.
You can think I'm wrong. You can think I'm wrong about one issue, but it's the issues that we agree upon that we need to affect change on, right? And then we'll get back to the stuff we disagree on. I feel like deal with the stuff you disagree with second. Don't start to attack that first, because you won't get any middle ground. Because there's some disagreements you can't change people's opinions on. So, and that's what we have in our politics today. Is a lot of people focus on these things that for some people they will never change their opinion on. No, whatever even real world facts won't change their opinion. Even seeing the evidence won't change their opinion. So I feel like don't focus on that, right? Let people have the right to their opinion and to live their lives the way they want. focus on what hurts people the most and what is best for the most people and what people can agree on. Like attack that first. And I feel like that is the Occupy Wall Street idea right there is let's deal with the biggest problems in our lives that affect everybody, which is economics and politics. Everything else, the social issues come after that, you know, and all the other stuff I feel like comes out even though they're just as important to people, and some people might feel more strongly.
Sure, and I mean you could have made that argument, before other social movements succeeded, and I think social issues matter. I'm not sure that I mean, and to a certain extent, maybe they've been more successful than than broad sweeping economic reform movements or something.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, social issues go back to economics, right? I mean, that's and politics. So I mean, they're not unrelated, because there's social issues in economics, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of try to split them up, even though they're all related. Because when you're fighting for social issues, you're fighting for economic issues too. If you're fighting for a social issue like the right to vote, I mean that's a political issue. That's an economic issue too.
Sure.
It's all. I kind of try to separate them by saying economics is in terms of the economy, jobs, the economy, employment, corporations and businesses and stuff like that, and politics is government. And then the social stuff is pretty much everything else. Is all the how do we live and what are our values kind of stuff. And I feel like the economic stuff is the stuff that most people can agree on doesn't work for them because, like I said, you can be pro-choice or pro-life. That's not going to determine whether or not you have a job. You know what I'm saying? So your primary issue, whether or not
unless your job is performing abortions, but yes, I take your point.
Yeah, and so. But I mean, even in that, okay.
Well, I'm saying, if they outright abortion, then that would affect certain people's jobs.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is,
it affects people economically because if you have to take care of a baby or what have you,
True. But the primary issue, right? Like you can have this social disagreement about. You can be, like I said, anti-abortion or pro-abortion, but whatever side of that you land on doesn't necessarily matter in terms of if you can put your kids through college or not, if you can buy health care, if you can afford your retirement. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that it's secondary in terms of that stuff. Like because even though it might be related and it might be more important to you in terms of what you think about most, in terms of your day-to-day life, I feel I don't know, maybe you could convince me otherwise, but I feel like economics affects people day to day. When people go to sleep at night, most people are worried about economics. They're not worried about necessarily the social stuff when they go. When that's not what's keeping them up. What's keeping them up at night is can they pay their mortgage? Are they going to get evicted? Are they going to have a job next week? Can they afford to that hip replacement for their mom? That's the kind of stuff people deal with day to day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. It's just that I don't think. So, but I mean, I don't know. Some of those problems are not necessarily resolvable. I mean, people worried about the economic situation, before Wall Street was any kind of a problem. I mean, it's not as though it's not as though you're going to be able to sort of get rid of economic uncertainty or.
Well, I mean, people worried about those things less, though, right? I mean, in times of economic prosperity, people worry about that stuff less. In times of economic disparity and disparity, if I can say that, or despair.
Oh, I see.
That's what I meant. And I think they think about it more. So it fluctuates. I'm not saying over time, every time, all the time. But I just think that it's intractable. Your being in this country, you are a part of the economic system, whether you have a job or not. And having a job is integral to being a part of that system. So what you believe in terms of separation of church and state, what you believe in terms of what people teach in school, like all that stuff is related. All this stuff goes back and forth to these issues, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely.
core of all of
Education
that,
is very
yeah,
very
yeah, yeah,
integral
yeah,
to the
totally,
economy.
totally. And education's an economic issue too, if you get down to it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like all of that stuff goes back to economics. That if we don't have
But then if
economic
someone
freedom,
like totally disagrees about how education should be sort of maintained, I mean, even if they are also dissatisfied, you know, what, it just seems strange, like, to sort of stand together with someone like that. It's like,
but you're not standing together for your differences. You're standing together for your commonalities. That's why you're standing together. So I think it's magnanimous in a way. I think it's the height of human capacity to overlook someone else's differences and to look into what makes them valuable and to make and look at what binds you and say, okay, let's go with that. So that I feel like that's the point, right? The point isn't to say we disagree, let's go march together. Like that doesn't make any sense. The point is, what do we agree on? Okay, these two things, let's go march about that.
yeah, okay, I see.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, yeah, if you go to these events, you will meet a ton of people who have a lot of ideas. Some might be crazy, some you might not have heard of. Like we were at this class talking about Glass-Steagall. People had never heard of that. People didn't know why that was important. That this law basically, if I get my story straight, separating uh what is it, regular banking from investment banking.
Right.
The
Yes.
fact that change, which was instituted after the Great Depression, after the financial, the Wall Street collapse in '29 or whatever it was. um why is it important that was changed? How was the system, affected by that change? Like, if people don't know that, again, like I said before, ignorance and complacency is the biggest tools the status quo and the powers that be have. So, if the least you do is go down to one of these things and you learn something new about how the economy works and how the government works, and you can be more informed, I think that's something good. Even if you say, "Man, these are a bunch of hippies, I'm out of here," but I learned that we need Glass-Steagall reenacted. I learned that what these banks are doing isn't right, and I didn't even know they were doing that. I didn't even know that's why. What's a derivative? There's people who don't know what a derivative is, or a mortgage-backed security, or why that's even important. You know, um,
I think I know what a derivative is, but I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in this stuff either. I can tell you how the collapse happened, generally speaking, but beyond that, it's
Yeah,
Greek to me.
I think I have that. I think I have that sort of down now, but
Yeah.
the vague story. But really, like, I hate to say it, but like,
Don't say it then.
Well,
Shut up about it.
Just in this context, I hate to say it. I'm gonna have to though. I don't have to, but I'm going to. Anyway.
All right, say it.
But like, I hate economics. It's of all the subjects in the world that there are.
Mhm.
It's got to be one of my least favorite. I've never liked it. I've never been interested in it. It makes me want to vomit when I hear even the terminology they use. I mean, using the word derivative makes me angry. Because I,
Because you want math to have that one.
Yes, the math derivative is good. Whatever it means in economics, I hate it. I hate that they took that word, and I understand, practically speaking, it's probably one of the more important disciplines because of the role that money plays in everyone's life, literally. I mean, it's hard to deny that, it's very significant and people need to study it. It matters, et cetera, et cetera. But
Mhm.
I still can't make myself not just want to vomit when people talk about it. It's
Yeah.
and so it just
Hey
bugs
man.
me. And it bugs me even more because we're talking about let's have economic reform, and so like first of all I hate it. Second of all, I don't know that much about it. And so, therefore
These are all obstacles to change, right?
ergo
I mean that's
Dr. Hawk, I don't I don't have
yeah.
good solutions to propose.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
but
I mean,
like
I
I
think it
don't I
starts simple,
like
dude. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I think it starts simple, and I mean, I feel your frustration. I'm in the same boat. I mean, a lot of this stuff I don't understand. Again, you have to go and find the information out for yourself, and we've been gifted with the best tool of information in the history of mankind, aka the internet, more specifically Wikipedia, and you can go find this stuff out.
Thank you.
And a lot of this stuff isn't as complicated as it seems in terms of the basic principles, right? It's like I could ask you this question. Um, do you think, and maybe let's see, there's a test. Maybe we'll get an answer or not. Do you think, in terms of economics, do you think the top 1% should own 40% of the wealth in the country?
Uh, I mean, generally speaking, I would say no. That sounds bad.
Okay. Wow, you're an economic professor here. Like you know a lot about economics. Do you think that it's fair
I could
for Wall
imagine some weird hypothetical scenario where that were okay. In the scenario we're actually in, it's
Mhm.
not good.
Do you think that it's fair
That was my
for
only hesitation.
yeah. And it's fair. Do you think that it's fair for Wall Street to make money off of money without actually providing any real return of wealth into the economy? Without actually producing anything?
Um. Let's see.
So here's what I would say to
So,
make it.
yeah, like the problem is I don't really understand how that works, and
So here's what I would
like
say.
I think
Here's what I
about
would
like
say.
there's people
Mhm.
get to gamble on things and so on. Like there's a certain, at least stock trading has a lot in common with gambling. Like
It's legalized
like
gambling.
I'm not sure that shouldn't be possible. I don't know. I feel like the question is,
You might
is
argue
it
for
sort of being
limits.
abused or something?
Yeah, you might
Yeah,
argue. You might argue for. And what I would say about this
exactly.
is when you as an average American work, you work to produce a good or service that has a value, right?
Yeah.
Like that's why you get paid for work, is because you're building something that can be sold, or you are providing a service that has a value, or which in turn makes somebody produce something that can be sold. That's the basic principle of work and the economy. The way Wall Street works, of course, is they are able to uh you know basically they're able to take financial assets and declare values on them without those values actually being accurate, right? So they can say this thing, you go to work and the company you work for determines your value for what you're making, and of course the value that for you to the company based on how much they pay you and what the benefits you get for working at that company, right? There's values associated with that. Well, on Wall Street, they get to determine their own values for their own assets, and they get to sell and buy and trade them back and forth to each other without actually making anything new by doing that. So one bank can sell a group of mortgage-backed securities to another bank, and then sell that to another bank, and sell that to another bank, and sell it back to the original bank. And there's this exchange and this profit that has been made by these sales, but nothing has actually changed. Nothing has actually been created. Nothing has actually been produced. And so that creates a bubble. That's money that has been created that does not go back to a tangible asset. The United States left the gold standard back in the 20s or 30s or whatever, where the Federal Reserve took over when it was created, and now the dollar isn't tied to how much gold we have. You know, uh, So anyway, maybe I'm proving the point about how economics is boring, but
As I yawn. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay.
but my point was that it's unsustainable to have an economic system where people can not only create assets and to define the assets to values that they want and to sell and trade and collude and do that kind of stuff, but they also it's a win-win situation because they can bet on each side of the coin and each side of the value. So if a stock goes up, if a stock goes down, they can bet either way and not lose any money. And as we saw in the financial collapse, if they ever do lose money, if they ever do need, you know, get overextended and spend more than they actually have on the books, because banks are allowed to do that. Banks are allowed to spend more than they kind of technically have up to a certain margin, and they went way, 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 way over that. And when it was time to pay the check, they didn't have money. But who ended up paying was the taxpayers. So anyway, maybe I did prove the point that this is complicated, but I think if you ask people just basic questions about economics, there's basic simple answers. Now, I'm not saying solutions are simple by any means. I think that's a farce. That's what Sarah Palin says about we just need common sense solutions. It's like, yeah, sometimes solutions aren't common sense. Sometimes solutions are counterintuitive. Sometimes solutions are extremely complicated.
Right.
But I think in terms of looking at the issues, they're more often can be whittled down to very simplistic ideas. But anyway, I don't want to be too much longer on this podcast. I think we're in hour 5 now.
Oh, okay.
So no one's going to listen to it because we haven't been talking about loss. So no one's going to be.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. I think there's one lost reference in there.
I mean, come on, dude. Would you go listen to a 5-hour economics political podcast?
Fuck no. Even if it were my favorite lost podcasters.
So if anybody's still listening, thank you.
Yes.
We just agreed we wouldn't be listening.
I like to think it was somewhat entertaining, but
yeah,
hard to tell.
I don't know. I think it's important to have the debate and the discussion. And like I said, I don't know how long this Occupy thing is going to go on. I don't know what the end goal is, but if at the very least, my personal goal, because I felt called to do it, is to just engage my immediate group of people that I know and talk about this stuff and whether or not it comes to anything, I think it's important just to hear what people like and don't like about the country and about what's going on in their lives and what's going on in the economy and in politics and all that stuff. And because if you're not talking about the issues, the people who don't want you to be talking about it will be happy. The people who there's people who hope everybody stays home. There's people who hope that the occupied Wall Street people are looked at as crazy and unorganized and undisciplined, and there's people who are smoking cigars in country clubs saying, "Yep, this isn't going to go anywhere. They don't have a coherent message. That's great. Just keep going." Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like those are the people who are succeeding in this country, and those are the people who and it's like I said, it's not everyone who's rich. Because it's not a rich issue necessarily. I think it's more of a morality issue. Because there's rich people who have high morals and who give back and who do philanthropy and who you can be successful and be a good person too. They're not mutually exclusive. And that's and so my whole thing is just to try to the extent that I can to educate and counteract any sort of negative propaganda with this movement and sort of civic interaction in general, because like I said, status quo wants you to stay home, man. They want you to think you can't do anything. They want you to think, it's too big of a problem and it's going to take too much of your time and you might not think this and you might not think that and you don't know about this group, you don't know these. All of that plays into their advantage, and you only get one life. You only get one chance to, not one chance to make a difference, but you have to stand up at a certain point, or don't, and you have no room to complain. I just, oh well, never mind. But all right, everybody. You have any final words, Justin, before we wrap it up?
You know, we covered a lot of ground today, and I I hope that was productive. I think you know, I got all my questions answered.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean,
you feel like you have a better understanding of the Occupy Wall Street movement and
yeah, definitely.
what it is, what it isn't, sort of.
Yes, yes, yes. Much more so than before. So that's probably true of anyone who didn't know that much about it before.
Well, that's all I wanted. I did have a goal, and that was my goal, and I hope
nice.
you reached it.
That goal. So yeah,
because
I
mean that's the thing. Trust me.
What?
I mean that's the thing about seeing. Oh, what are those people, and who's this? And I'm hearing something on the news. I don't know what it is, and I think it's hard to. I mean, it's easy in a way, but it's hard to find out information about certain things like that, and to get a good sense of who to trust about what you're hearing. So trust me, because I'm not being paid to say this.
Right.
Wink, wink. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes, thank you. My thanks I extend also for you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for being the voice of the common man, the average American here.
No problem. It's easy for me to do because, like the average American, I'm pretty spectacularly uninformed about a lot of things.
I would say if you're at all interested, if you're at all curious, go down to your local occupation, and you can find it online. Occupy whatever city, see if there's one. You can go to I think it's meetup.com, that meetup site where people can do those meetups. I keep saying meetups, and they have a list of all the different places that are in various states of organization and occupation. Like I said, some people just started. Some people are in day 2 and 3. Some people, 17, 18. We'll see how long this thing goes, man. And there's no guarantee. And I don't think it's a failure. I don't think anyone who goes out and participates, even for an hour, even for 5 minutes, even dropping off some water to these people, even whatever. I don't think you should count yourself a failure if it peters out in a month. You shouldn't count yourself a failure as if we don't rewrite the Constitution.
I really hope you don't do that because that's a tough road.
Yeah, I mean, getting out there, showing support, showing that you have a vested interest in the direction of this country, you've succeeded by doing that. So, by the least that the minimum you could do, that's what you're doing is showing you have a voice, you care, it's important, and hey, everything else is icing on the cake.
Nice.
Until next time.
See you later, guys.
I was going to say, until next time, stay occupied.
Oh.